So those who are able to bridge that gap perceptually and conceive of church as this is my community, not an event that I come to and real life and real friendship happens outside of these walls, I think why it has meant so much to so many people who have conceptualized it.
Including you and I.
Exactly.
And I was just to go back to something you said about how there are spaces that are you're passive. You go to it to be. It's part of a concert hall or something like that. Do you think that's different to being a consumer, or is it the same thing? Welcome back, everyone, to the Shock Absorber podcast, and it's me, Joel, your host, and it's Tim, our host.
Oh, thank you. It's very inclusive.
Yeah, I'm your host. You are our host.
Oh,
thank you for having us. Thank you for having us on this.
You're welcome. Thanks for being here, Joel.
Yeah, thank you very much. You're going to host, are you?
Apparently, I'm our host.
You are. Yeah, you're our
welcome
host.
To my house.
Our house. That's what I'm thinking of.
Oh yeah. Middle of our street.
Yep. I feel that wasn't that a show?
It was a theme song for a show, but it's an Australian rock anthem. No.
Yep. There's something like that. Yeah.
Yeah.
I can't remember who actually published that song. But today we are here, just you and me. We're going to continue to talk about the theme of third places, which we talked
madness.
about.
Or madness. Sorry.
Madness?
Madness, not Australian.
I was thought you were saying the madness of third places.
No, Madness was the name of the band. Our house. Our house.
Yep.
Yeah, sorry.
No, that's okay, because we're going to continue to talk about the theme 4 of Stu's PhD research.
Yes.
It has come out of all the interviews that he and yourself have done. And this week, we thought we may as well extend talking about some of those topics that we kind of didn't have enough time. Now, this episode will be a little bit shorter because
we have an important engagement.
We have an important engagement. Socceroos are kicking off in 32 minutes. And so I want to watch it, as you, I'm sure, as an avid football fan.
Newly acquired football fan.
Well, you're happy because this morning Germany have qualified for the next round.
They did. They did lose to Ecuador, but we were already qualified to go through. So
yes, they won their first 2 games.
Yep.
So that's okay.
So we were happy about that.
As I was saying, I like this German team, but I don't know if they quite got it to win the tournament. We'll have to see. Gone
through to the next rounds, the next level. So I think that's a step up from the last 2 World Cups. So
that's true.
Yeah,
actually, yeah, they have been a bit disappointing in the last 2 World Cups.
Yes, and some of the media coming out of Germany was that they were hopeful but doubtful that they would make it this far. So
really,
yeah. Even the German press were sceptical.
Oh, I find that surprising.
Hopeful, as always, in that kind of, you want to be patriotic kind of way, but in reality, probably not going to do it.
So the thing, thank you for showing us your true colours in the team that you support. One thing that you kind of left as a teaser or unresolved in the last episode, was this consumer versus contributor tension that comes from the third place and the regulars and irregulars concept that we've talked about. Why do you think there's a tension there? Is it because people the regulars would get frustrated that the irregulars aren't contributing? Or what are we actually looking for in a kind of third place? Because we want more irregulars to become regulars. But what does that look like, do you think, as they become more regular?
Yeah, you want people to buy into the space. And I think this is the tension with this topic is we've got theological categories and sociological categories kind of intertwining, and Jesus being Lord of everything, including sociology. There's always I'm looking for ways in which they do overlap, but also there's also the problem with doing sociology when you should be doing theology or vice versa. So looking for the genuine interaction. So that's a tension point and I don't always do that well. Sometimes I confuse the two. So listen to beware.
You do love sociology.
I do. Yes. Yeah. And trying to see how God has set the world up, social systems up in a way that align with His purposes and design of the world. So there's, that's my sort of meta theory. But so there's theological category. We want people to go from outside the kingdom to inside the kingdom. We want people to go from immature discipleship to mature discipleship. And because we believe in the importance of the local church, we want that to be expressed in people's lives through commitment to the local church, because we think that by God's good design, He's knitted us into each other. Westerhoff, children's developmental theologian, talks about the importance of other faithing selves, which is his quirky little way of saying how important it is that I am with others who are faithing, and I am faithing, and together we faith together, and we're building each other up into that. And another quote that I use all the time is, what's his name? Joseph Hellerman, who talks about we're saved to community. And so there's this very explicit and intentional communal design to what it means to be a Christian. It's a team sport, not a solo sport. And so therefore healthy faith and healthy Christianity, healthy discipleship is one in which you gather with others who are God's people. And so we want to see mature, healthy, Christ-oriented faith in others expressed through church gathering as one of the indicators of healthy faith. So that's theologically why we want to see irregulars become regulars, whether it's because they're becoming saved and becoming Christians, or whether because they do have a faith, but the immaturity of their faith expresses itself through lack of engagement with the corporate gathered people. And we want to say, personal salvation is important, but it's personal salvation expressed through community, which is the New Testament vision of what it means to be a Christian. So all of that's sort of theological work. You could talk about Bible passages and whatever to go with that. But sociological, to get to our third place conversation, you want to get the regulars are setting the tone for what that church looks like, for better or for worse. But the regulars are the ones who are setting the culture. And so what we want mature believers to be in the regular group, to which others can come into. So all those other characteristics of third place about it being a positive space, being a leveling space, being a conversational space, being a lighthearted space, all of that is set by the regulars' engagement with the space. So if they are people who are characterised and they're characterising the space through those ways, then that'll be something that is attractive to others, but others will want to be in this space. And so that's that kind of move that we're trying to get people from irregulars to regulars, acknowledging that part of the theory is that there will always be irregulars, and that's okay. That's just part of social dynamics. And so hopefully that means that the churches are growing. You might be a church that's trying to intentionally bud and plant new gatherings or intentionally grow in the space that you've got. We've talked a lot about how Soul Revival, our strategy for church, is a network of small to medium-sized churches rather than one large church. And there are sociological and theological reasons for that. But that's the move. We're trying to get people from irregular to regular, both theologically but also sociologically, because we think it's valuable for them and for their development.
Yeah, and I think that's... as we look at all these PhD research and the categories that have come out for it, it's really interesting how it better articulates what I experienced growing up in the youth ministry, and then later on in the young adults ministry, and then also then as we became a church as well when we planted. The thing that I always see is that, like, why wouldn't you want to belong? That's the thing that I always think about. But I'm wondering if sometimes the struggle with people to understand, it could be the clash of people who've grown up in homogeneous unit principle churches and come across Soul Revival, for example, and still don't get why we spend so much time with each other and still see their friendships as being outside the church, but church is something they go to, like this kind of event-based vibe of that's how I go to church. What do you think that sometimes the tension that you're talking about exists because there is a preconceived idea that church is just an hour and you have maybe a coffee and a biscuit and then you get out of there and go do the things you really want to do?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. And so the the dynamic now, this is just some research. Not very familiar with this guy, but Lefebvre, French sociologist, he talks about the difference between dominated spaces versus appropriated spaces.
Yeah.
And the dynamic that's going on here is that a dominated space is designed, controlled, and delivered by producers for passive recipients. And so a concert venue would be a good example of this. You come and you observe what's going on. An appropriated space is one that you come and you inhabit and you co-create while you're there. And so this is what the regulars are doing in a third place, is that they're an appropriated space. They've appropriated it from themselves. They're contributing and co-creating the space, not being performed to. So why I think this is fascinating, and I'd love to dig in further and read some more of Lefebvre, is the tension that you've just highlighted, that I think most people assume church is a dominated space, not an appropriated space.
I see. Okay.
So most people think of church like a concert venue more than like sitting around at a table at someone's house having a meal. And that perception, whether it's named or not, that's really significant. That's what people think they're coming to. And so there are some tensions here, and some are cultural, some lean a little bit more theological. And so one tension is the way that we've created church gatherings to be, where there is a sort of a producer up the front, to use very secular language, who is controlling the space and controlling the event. And this is the problem, that we see it as an event. And part of it is we have a very gathering-centric model of church, that it's lovely if people come earlier and it's lovely if people stay afterwards, but really what we're there for is that hour or hour and a bit in the middle. And as in most models of sort of Protestant evangelical churches, you are very passive during that hour and a bit. You're singing, but you didn't contribute to the songs. You didn't put in your requests. You didn't choose the songs. It was picked for you, and you're just singing along to whatever the band or the worship leader happened to pick that week. You might, in some liturgical churches, you might say the prayers together. That's getting a little bit close, but even those are written for you. You're not participating largely in that. The Bible is read, and you are preached at, and then the service wraps up. So that all of those elements we can be quite passive in, or we're just experiencing the elements that have been prepared by us, by others. And so that's kind of very much fits in this definition, so I understand, of the dominated space, that we come as participants, but we're passive. So we don't think of church being that kind. We think of it as an event, rather we think of it as a community, as appropriated space. Now, there is a theological category here that we need to be aware of, that we do believe in the authority of Scripture. So Scripture is going to dominate our space. So it's not going to be a complete free-for-all. Oh, what do you think about this topic? What do you think about this topic? And, well, I think about the Bible, but if you want to come with a New Age view, or if you want to come with an Islamic view, or if you want to come with a pop psychology you learnt on the manosphere view, it doesn't matter. Like, we're all kind of just all levelers. We're all the same. Actually part of being a Jesus-centric, Christ-centered Christian third place is we still give authority to Scripture as the norming norm of everything that we do. So there's a theological conviction there. We also have a theological conviction on the place of leadership and eldership. And so I wrote a piece on this recently, we can link it below, about the difference between leading and contributing, because there's a lot of talk in the intergenerational space about letting children lead. And I couldn't work out why that was sitting funny with me until I kind of sat down and started writing out some thoughts and realised, it's not about leading, it's about contributing. And there's a significant difference, and there's a significant theological difference, that all of us are one in Christ, and we are a priesthood of all believers, and yet God gives leaders to the church. Yep. So there is a role in which to use the secular language of Lefebvre, the producer of the gathering time does have a genuine leadership role that sets the agenda in a way that others are invited into contributing to, but not necessarily leading. So we do believe in a theological category there, and you can go to Ephesians 4, you can go to the Timothy and Titus and places like that, which really uphold leadership as a really important dynamic, and that not everyone is a leader, and that's okay. But then there are other cultural things, and this is kind of speaks more to where we are in the 20th century, that because we prioritise this kind of produced from the front, it's more predictable and it's controllable. And again, in our very sort of mechanised world, in a very efficient world, we've talked about that a few weeks ago, that works well. It fits where we are in the early 21st century. We've come out of decades of very attractional ministry model, which is actually geared towards the irregular and the newcomer rather than the regular. So this is a space to come and explore Jesus, rather than somewhere where you inhabit the space and you are co-creating your discipleship together. Then there's, to feed more on Oldenburg's idea, there's this sort of suburban critique of the sociology of church, that you drive to church and it's not really on the way to anywhere else, whereas other third places he talks about, cafes, libraries, barbershops, pubs, are kind of, you're in the community. You might be on the way to somewhere else and you stop for a drink or you stop for a chat or whatever, and on the way to something else is always just embedded in your community, whereas we talked about this a few weeks ago, people don't often church where they live. People will travel about 20 minutes, which, with a car means that's actually quite a fair distance. So your church is not always in your community. So that's really significant. And the other really interesting thing is, what do we measure? And so there's this sort of that management truism that you measure what you value and you value what you measure. And so what do churches tend to measure? Bums on seats, money on the plate. And both of those are sort of consumption methods, not participation, co-contributing methods. What would it look like to measure the co-contribution and the co-creation of a third place? Well, that's kind of part of the experiment that Soul Revival's on, right? So,
it'd be a tough one to measure.
Yeah. So there's just a number of things I think that are going on that are feeding the reason why people in 21st century West, particularly suburbia, find it very difficult to conceive of church as a third place community, because they just don't think of church as a third place. It's an event. It's a dominated space, not an appropriated space. Use Lefebvre's framework. It's an event, not a community. And that subtle perception shift, I think, is really significant of why, even after, 14 years of church and 30-something years of Soul Revival, have struggled to help people communicate that. But I think it also helps why people who have grasped it treasure it and really love it and have bought in deeply, because your level of affection for a community is much higher than your affection for an event. And so those who are able to bridge that gap perceptually and conceive of church as, this is my community, not an event that I come to and real life and real friendship happens outside of these walls, I think why it has meant so much to so many people who have conceptualized it.
Including you and I.
Exactly.
And I was just to go back to something you said about how there are spaces that are you're passive. You go to it to be, it's part of a concert hall or something like that. Do you think that's different to being a consumer, or is it the same thing? Because I'm just wondering there, you said the attractional model, for example, has been geared towards welcoming irregulars. But do you think that has led the regulars to become consumers rather than the contributing idea that we're talking about?
Yes, well, I think that my understanding of like a seeker-sensitive model of church is that the Sunday gathering, and this is made very explicit in the sort of the Saddleback version of this, where they have their concentric circles of who each thing is for. And so the weekend gatherings are for the crowd. And so that's a very intentional move that they've made, that the gathering is for the crowd. It is to be seeker sensitive. It is for the newcomer to come and explore Jesus. They would argue that you work your way further into the inner circles of relationship. And so I'm not aware of them using this kind of language, but you know, if kind of blend terms, if you would create this sort of attributive, more co-creative space, they would probably argue happens in home groups and happens in midweek Bible studies. So this is where it is less event and more community. So that's an intentional move that they make in that particular strategy of doing church. And I think that what has seeped out from that is that even non-mega church, non-seeker sensitive churches have picked up that. I mean, you know, that kind of Saddleback Willow Creek model was intentionally, explicitly exported to the rest of the certainly Western world and Western suburban world particularly as well. And so, you know, I think it caught onto the, the zeitgeist of how you do church. It was just assumed as we exited the 20th century, entered the 21st century, that was just assumed that was how you do church, which I think even unintentionally meant that people in non-seeker sensitive churches, and I think most senior evangelical Anglican churches would not claim a seeker sensitive title or label for themselves, but that the ministry teams may still run it in such a way and people still attend in such a way that feeds more of an event model with passive engagement rather than a community model. And again, part of that is, as I said, there's genuine theological tension there. There's the way we do a gathering, which is not, you know, a late 20th century invention, like the way you know, preaching prayer, hearing from God's word, like that's, you know, centuries old, goes all the way back to, you know, Jewish synagogue practice. So that's not new. But yes, it helps feed this dynamic.
And I was also going to think about like how we're measuring the commitment to the community. And I thought, well, we were saying before that it's hard to measure it, but I was wondering if it is, because you talked about the traditional measures are, like you said, bums on seats and money in the plate.
Yep.
But I'm wondering if, you know, kind of what we're talking about today, a commitment to a third place community that is explicitly Christian, could be measured by, I've got two ideas. Serving in ministry.
Yep.
And then time spent in that community. What do you think about those two things? Would they be a good measure or a indicative measure, or perhaps a what's a statistic that's misleading? I can't think.
We'll
say it's misleading. Could it be misleading?
Yeah. No, I think they're well on their way. Yeah, absolutely. So certainly contribution. I mean, that's what we're wanting. We want co-contribution. And again, part of this is there's subtle differences between your perception of, oh, I'm on a roster, versus this is my community, of course I'm serving. So even that may have slightly different affective engagement or emotional engagement. I can, you know, if you're part of a soccer club in, you know, the Sutherland Shire, you do your time on ground control, you do your time in the canteen, you might do your share on the barbecue. You can kind of begrudge it. You just know that it's part and parcel of, my kid really loves soccer, and 1 week a season I got to turn sausages on the barbecue. Don't love it, not my favourite thing in the world. I just do it because everyone does it. I'm just playing my part. And you can certainly have people who are serving in church with that kind of mindset. Yeah, sure, why? I guess not. Why not? Sure, I suppose I should, you know, clean up every now and then, or I suppose I should go on the kids roster, or I suppose I should, you know, it's not seen as a joyful co-contribution of the life that we're doing together. It's I understand rosters work. Kind of like, you know, some people in office workplaces, it's your turn to unpack the dishwasher this week. Okay, cool. It just is. Like, it's just part of what makes the office function. And I think there's probably a subtle difference between that kind of, I'm just doing something because it's the roster and it's the right thing to do, through to I'm actively serving my community because, of course, why wouldn't you? Like, it's just part of what we do as life together. I don't know. Maybe that's too nuanced. I'm not sure. I'm trying to tease that out. But it can be a very healthy indicator as well. So I want to say yes. I think it's probably a very good measure of who is in ministry teams. And one of the language we try and use at church is this language of, because we're a community, because we're family, everyone chips in. Of course they do. And so part of it is trying to build that regularity of, well, why wouldn't you do this? If you have everyone over for Christmas dinner, it's kind of expected that everyone will contribute in some way. Some people might, bring the food. Some people brings the drink. Some people bring the bonbons. Everyone contributes something. It's just a normal part of what we do. And that's what we're saying, as when church is not an event which is passive, but a community where you're co-contributing, of course you chip in and contribute. So yes, I think that's a really healthy measure. What was the other one? Time spent? Time spent, yeah. Yes.
That's what I'm thinking about most.
Yeah, and I think that's absolutely true. That and again, like there's I want to be here. So it's both the amount of time spent as well as the regularity of your commitment there. And with that regularity, again, is not the begrudging regularity, but why would I choose to be anywhere else? Like, of course, this is what I do. And because I'm a Christian. And we talked in the staff meeting the other day, we're gearing up for a series on the 10 Commandments. We're talking about the Sabbath sermon in particular. And Stuart made the comment that he spends a lot of his time as a minister trying to convince Christians to go to church, and finds it a bit wearying. And we were just kind of all in solidarity saying, it's a bit frustrating, isn't it? Because why doesn't every Christian just have the assumption, well, of course I'm going to church, I'm a Christian. Like, why do you have to talk Christians into going to church? It seems it's frustrating. But that again is seen as, of course I'm here. I'm co-contributing to this space. It's not just an event that I'm going to. I am an important member here of this. And I think part of that is, would people notice if I wasn't there? And so that's both a relational thing, but also my contribution was so significant that if I'm not there, it's seen as a loss. So there's a meaningful co-contribution. I think that's really significant as well. And this is what, again, we talk about in intergenerational ministry a lot, is how do you help children and young people have meaningful co-contribution? It's not token, but it is genuinely contributing to the life together. We could do it without this person. We choose to include them. And that choice to include people, invite people into co-contributing and co-creating the space is really significant. So I would think that those two measures are really significant. I think I had another fleeting thought of another one. It might come back to me.
Well, that's all right. Because I was thinking, interesting development this year for me in terms of just the age my children are now. So we always from the very beginning, since we planted the church, been going on Saturday night at Kirrawee. That's our main gathering that we go to. But now, because my daughter goes to Fuse, which is our year 5 and 6 group, and then we have a gathering in the middle and then youth is afterwards, and my son goes to youth now because he's old enough to do that too, is that I just stay and I go to another church gathering now, and I preached at it recently, and I was like, oh, now I go to church twice a week, and I didn't even really realise it.
Yep.
But I'm now like, I want to, Friday night's my secondary service. I really want to dig in and make this. So I now decided I'm going in and I'm making notes while they're doing the sermon. And it is a shorter sermon, but that's fine. But it's an interesting shift that I've had to make in my mind, is where I used to be a little bit sad that I couldn't stay for late night anymore, which I was so used to doing. I grew up so many years, what must be near on 20 years of doing.
Yep.
Of hanging out I'd be a bit less than 20 years, but hanging out with my friends, my Christian friends, for a very long time into the night. Couldn't do that so much now that I have a family of 3 children. But it's almost, I like it how we've now developed ways of doing that in other ways instead of just what we used to do in youth and young adult ministry. Now that we're a church, we find other ways to do it as well, because there are people of different ages and stages and different backgrounds and things like that. So the time spent can be not just on a Saturday night, for example. It can be in the other gatherings we have and how we spend time with each other in those as well. So I thought that was a really cool way of thinking about it. My question, I suppose, the last question to wrap it up is, and it's a practical one, is we always would love and invite people in to become regulars rather than just be irregulars, and to serve more, like we said, and to be contributors to the community. Be there for a long time, as we're saying. And obviously we want people to turn up first, but serving especially, and time spent, as we said, was a measure of commitment and enjoyment of the community. How do we help people shift from that perhaps consumer idea or passive idea to be a contributor, be part of this? I mean, it's hard to just say, you should do it. You should convince me. But how do we show that we have a conviction to do it and to share in that conviction with them as well?
Yeah, so this is another tension, and this comes out in Lefebvre's theory. Is it's very hard to intentionally create an appropriated space, because you're saying, I'm the producer in this language, and I'm creating a space that I want you to appropriate for yourself. And those two things are in contradiction in his framework. And so it's the same kind of tension, I think, that we notice where we've talked about how do you institutionalize friendship. So because they seem intentionally at odds with each other. Something's either institutionalized or it's organic and friendship.
Yes.
So how do you institutionalize organic relationships? And I think that's a genuine tension that we're trying to play with. And
run through this whole episode that we've.
Well, yeah, and it's and you know, through the 30-something years of Soul Revival has struggled to work this through. And I think one answer is to invite people in so that their voice can help shape culture, and they can help shape what you do. And what that is doing is you're allowing, this is the shock absorber at work, is that though the maturity of the old or the regulars is listening to the voice of irregulars, and they're able to co-contribute into this space so that it starts to reflect both in a way that is healthy. And so the role of the regular, and particularly the mature regular, and particularly in a church setting, the ordained ministry team who have been theologically, again, we believe, has responsibility there, is to hold the church accountable to things that are theologically true throughout all time and space, and then allow for regulars and even irregulars to help shape the culture and the community in a way that is reflective of being 2026, not being 1826. So
speak for yourself.
So being able to do that in a way, and so that is the listening, and it's the inviting into change culture. And so one of the things we try and do, and so the way we've sort of institutionalized this a little bit, is we have these commitments meetings, and we say to the commitments, you are the regulars. That's our word, basically our word for regulars. You're committed to Jesus, and you're committed to Soul Revival as your home church, as your third place, you could say. And so therefore, you are helping shape the culture. What do you notice? What are we doing well? What would you like to improve on? How can we encourage and improve and do what we're doing? And you let them have voice, and then you follow through, and with appropriate maturity, you also let the organic nature of those things help shape what you're doing. And so a very simple example from a couple of weeks ago, we were having a kids ministry meeting at Miranda, and one of the young girls from the group 10-ish, was kind of hanging around the church as we were meeting. And I just called her over and I said, hey, come over here. I said, we're just talking about Kidscape. What's going well, what's not going well. What do you reckon? What's going well? What do you really enjoy? And she, this. And so, some of them were like, oh, I like it when the boys aren't there. And it's like, okay, well, I mean, that's where the maturity of the leadership can go, well, actually, we want this to be a space where both boys and girls are welcome. So it's important to hear that, but when we're not going, the answer to that is not to create a boys only and a girls only space. But it's good for you to know. And maybe we can think about when the boys are there, okay, what is the negative energy you're noticing when the boys are there that stops you and your friends with your female energy being able to have a safe space? Is there a safety issue? Is there a relational issue? Is there whatever it might be? So, okay, good feedback. What don't you like, or what? And so hearing from the child and her 10-year-old perspective shaped the conversation and shaped the activities. And we said, what activities have you really enjoyed this term? Okay, well, let's put those on for next term. Which ones haven't you enjoyed? Okay, well, maybe we'll really think about doing that again. She's not the only voice, but she's a significant one. And so that was allowing her to own the culture and to own the space and to invite her into that her voice mattered. Yeah. And we will help shape our Friday night kids club based on the opinions of a 10-year-old. And so that's part of that, letting that the irregular or the younger regular, the less mature regular, actually shape the culture of what we're doing, and stops it from being, we're the leaders, we're putting on a thing that you come along to and participate in, but much more passively to, no, we're doing this together. We're creating the space together. And so those kind of conversations you can spread throughout all the different levels and activities and ministries of your church. Yeah,
I think that's a brilliant way of articulating how we really put in a lot of effort to do that and kind of mitigate against that idea that Stuart's talked about, where Mark Center's view that people aren't listening in church until they turn 40.
30 or 40, whatever it is.
30 or 40 or something like that. So I think that's a brilliant way to sum it up, actually, is that, and I think, again, as we look at these ideas, articulating what we're actually doing as a church and how I've actually grown up in it, but without really realising a lot of the things that have actually been the case. So I think that's a great way to finish, that really as we try to institutionalise friendships, not ideas or cultures, is that we use the theological framework we have to institutionalise our friendships, because that's when we can bring the Bible to bear on new ideas, but also we can allow people to have a voice to be able to speak up, what we call like a bottom-up approach. So I think that's brilliant. So thank you very much, Tim.
Thank you, Joel.
It's been wonderful, as always.
Yes.
We're about to go and watch the Socceroos.
Yeah.
But if you have any questions or thoughts or queries, send them to me at joel@shockersorber.com.au, and I would love to answer them on the podcast with my two fine co-hosts. And you can also visit the website, shockersorber.com.au. For now, until next week, we'll say goodbye. And one way.
One way.